Chairman, PS, I wonder if the assessment as laid out here, and I'm not trying to be parochial or myopic, but St. James accounts for livestock crop damage at a bit over $2 billion. Most of the farm roads in St. James have been cut off, not just to vehicular traffic, but also to foot. So a lot of our farmers haven't been able to access their farms. How then did we reach $2.1 billion? Is it solely aerial coverage, or have you found another way to get into these farms so that we can truly present a picture that reflects what's happening on the ground? One. Number two, PS, with respect, it's related to the farm roads. I know you mentioned the $2.7 billion worth of loss that you've registered, and about 800 million, you said, has been identified to assist with farm roads. But in the interim, I know that is to be spent over the rest of the financial year. In the interim, can we get some marl and shingles or whatever to kind of fill the gap in some of these areas until you get to reinstating the roads? Because we have what is left of our crops after Hurricane Melissa can still be recovered, but we just can't access it. So we want to know if there can be some interim measures, filling in some of the greater craters so that we can get out the food that is still there before it goes bad. And finally, with respect to food security, and speaking from Western Jamaica and St. James in particular, the markets are already reflecting the loss of the food we would have expected to have on the shelves at this time. Are there any interim measures that the ministry is contemplating to ensure we have meals at Christmas, and that I know it takes 6 to 9 months for the bananas to come back and the plantains to come back, but what interim measure so that we are not starving are you contemplating so we have food for Christmas?
All right, I'm going to suggest that rather than go a second round of questions after we get answers for these, that we move on to another ministry. We have 4 ministries here. We've used an hour already. And I really don't want us to go a second round while we have important other ministries to get to. So, no, the second round I'm talking about. Those who haven't asked a question yet, I will still allow. But I'm throwing it to the ministry to respond to those questions now. No, but Mr. Williams appears to have I don't know how much farmers he has in his area, but he has a second round, so you can go with him. PS, just turn on your mic for me. PS, just turn on your mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to be very quick in dealing with this. Regarding seeds. The previous situation was $80 million.
That's why I wanted to ask the question, because it was added to
that was totally
You're saying you just want to tag it on to...
Yes, because it's a quick question that it would be incorporated in the answer. 2 areas. One, what was happening in respect of the drone mapping of crops that we had, farm roads that we have, being able to quickly assess exactly what is the extent of the damage. That's related to the question, Ms. And then
Burchell
read the seeds. Even though we spoke about seeds, what about seedlings in particular? If RADA has been able to identify existing seedlings, and why that particular question, seedlings would help us to recover faster for the cash crops that we would need for Christmas than seeds at this moment. So if they could give us an idea the extent of seedlings that survive Melissa and how fast we would be able to get those distributed so we can get moving for Christmas.
You You said that in this phase, we're really focusing on giving people access, whether 1 or 2 lanes. But relocation is something that I think we have to think about for some of our communities that still, even with the 1 lane or the 2 lane, it's added hours upon our commute. And also the taxi fares have increased, quadrupled in most cases, from $250 in most of my communities to as much as $1,000. So Melissa has brought a lot of terror, but some lessons as well and some opportunities. Would a relocation of the Spring Mount Road, for example, in East Central St. James, which is the main thoroughfare for us from Montego Bay into deeper South St. James, be something that we accelerate, front load now? Also the conversation of making that passage from Trelawney into Magotty that comes through St. James, could that also be looked at urgently before people start to make their own little route and then the bigger picture is missed and the blessing, if I dare say so, from Hurricane Melissa of recreating this new path be accelerated? I wanted to say to you, PS, that perhaps we ought to look at the disaster zones separately and differently than how we treat with the other constituencies. And I say that to say, an MP like myself, every day I'm out there trying to beg food for constituencies. For constituents. I'm not yet at the stage where I can dedicate my mind physically or my thoughts to saying, how do I go find 100 special people to give this housing benefit to? And then myself go there and geotag and walk the communities and find these houses. Perhaps your ministry can't employ or give stipends to every constituency. But a constituency that's dealing with a disaster at the scale of which South St. James, East Westmoreland, etc., are dealing with and treating with, perhaps the ministry could take on the administrative workload from us. And I do see it. I hear, rather, that there are representatives from the MLSS, from SDC, and wherever else, and maybe from MP's office, who are in the space collecting data, and it's causing quite a problem. Because when I say I'm not aware of who is collecting data, because they say, oh, they're only collecting data from a certain set of people versus that, I don't know, because there's no communication from the ministry to say, we have trained 2 persons and they're going into these communities to collect data. So I'm then going to be stretching myself to collect this data when you're already collecting it. So the overlap, I get the point of the overlap, but it's even more entrenched, a more difficult problem in the disaster zones that you have to treat separately than how you treat. I mean, I heard Member Holness said that within a week or so, I'm paraphrasing, she was able to get to her people and get the data out. They were able to access it, Down there, it's night and day, as she's saying, for us to go in to get the data. So when I heard Miss Monique Gibbs, yes, our data person said that the assessment is 190,000 or so buildings that have been destroyed. In our case, in South St. James, a house, when you look on Google Earth, I could tell you my house was here, but it's no longer there because I didn't really have no foundation. You understand? So when the wind come, the tornado come, it split up the house, as the man said to me. Not split up the house, it split up the house. Because when I say, can you go find some piece of wood, find some plyboard and zinc, he's saying, I don't know where to start because everything split up, right? So going to geotag a location and saying the house was here and then it's an empty spot may seem as if I'm fluffing the data, but it is our reality. And your data, your radar won't capture that a house once stood here. Because a house may have been just a little square, but it was my house and it no longer exists. So this 190K data, I know you say it's about 80% or so accurate. I want us to treat the disaster constituencies differently. Let's not rely on the technology only. Let's fold in from now, the people who go in the field, collect the data, and see that in one community, I've lost 100 houses. So for me to choose this $10 million that has been allocated, for me to find 100 people, it's one person per community, if you understand what I'm saying. So this opportunity that we have to treat with deep rurals and disaster constituencies differently than we treat with the other constituencies, even understanding that they have their own issues. But we need the administrative support from the MLSS. We need the coordination. We need the information to know when you're operating in our spaces so that we can then not duplicate the effort. And we need, Sir Hunter, we need our roads to move from just drivable or passable to being thought out as giving us rehabilitated, fully developed roads. We deserve it now. For the time come now, to get some proper roads into deep rural constituencies like South St. James, and Melissa is opening that for us. Thank you.
Just to add to that question about the data, can that satellite radar images, which are 88% accurate, that's much more data than we have now. Could that be shared with the members of parliament? Go ahead. I'm trying. Go ahead.
So we can create the data in a way that's ingestible by the by the members of parliament. So we can give you a listing of the type of damage of the buildings in your constituencies and share it either by a digital map or an application on your phone, whatever is best for you, or a printed map, whatever is best for you. We can share that data. We can create it in a format that you can easily digest it.
I think that would be appreciated by everybody, even in terms of this particular grant. And everybody is saying it. You know, you have water more than flour. You know, you have 10 times the amount of potential. But if you could see, you know, spatially where the concentrations are, it would better help you figure out how to allocate it so that you don't take care of one community and 10 more are omitted. So it really was more a suggestion or than well, if I were to reformat into a question, it is there going to be any possibility of getting some administrative support and for the whole coordination effort, especially in the hardest hit constituencies, which look almost, in some cases, post-apocalyptic.
Yeah. Just two more was the question.
Go ahead. Since it's just two more, you Omar.
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of the data that is available, I want to know, because that would be useful for even in terms of planning for even constituencies that are not as hard hit. But in addition to that, when I understand the level of devastation in the West. I do. When I go into my constituency, though, and someone has no house where their house was, because we did get tropical storm conditions in St. Mary. When somebody has no house where their house was, they don't care if they're in St. Mary or they're in Trelawney or St. James. They want to figure a way out and how they can get back to housing. So when the planning, especially doing radar data, which I imagine satellite imagery, I imagine you can do that across the entire country. I'm trying to understand why that technology stopped in St. Anne based on what you presented and didn't go in. Just one second, let me just finish the question so that I can give up the microphone. So the second question for you, Mr. Hunter. That $5 billion budget to get back some of the roads to some semblance of readiness, can you indicate when the work will start? Because, again, there are a number of constituencies, and I want to talk about Central, but I can't be parochial. But there are a number of constituencies with roadways that are cut off and culverts that have cavities, deepened cavities. Some of those the Prime Minister has been brought to look at. And, you know, the hurricane has created a more, a greater concern, a much greater concern. Going into Marlborough, for example, you have to be telling vehicles, hey, don't go too much to the left because, you know, you don't know when the road going to compromise and just. So I would love to get an idea of when that work will start. And the final question, because I realized there isn't uniformity in terms of what NWA did on the morning after the election across parishes. So in my parish, I'm just telling you.
After the election?
The day after after Melissa. After Melissa, yes. The day after Melissa, yes. So after Melissa elected to come to Jamaica. In some parishes, it seems NWA stepped out quickly and started clearing roads, etc. But hearing from some colleagues, it sounded as if, sorry? So hearing from some colleagues, though, CEO, it sounds as if they never act. In some areas, they were waiting for budget and other instructions. I want to know, what should our expectations be across the board, since these are getting more intense in terms of weather events, and we may have one again in the future?
No, I'm just taking a final question for you, and then you will be finished with your ministry.